Okay, this is the beginning of a series I'm doing on the building of Dunsmith. Most of these kits are going to be the Sarissa kits that are directly available, or were directly available through the Kickstarter through Crooked Dice. But there were a couple other kits. If you want to do every single board exactly, or as close as possible to exactly like the board setups in the book itself, there are a few other kits that are involved. And to be able to expand Dunsmith, I've also gotten some just additional buildings. So this is the box of Dunsmith. There are some resin bits here that I haven't taken out. I'm going to be essentially trying to build these in order, not just to make it easier for myself and avoid the analysis paralysis of what building or buildings I should be working on, but also because I want to be able to do in-store demos, and obviously a narrative campaign is going to have most of its strength and impact if you can do it in order. So I am going to be starting off with the Sarissa kits from the first mission. The first and the biggest is going to be the large factory I-010. This is the left-hand kit. There are two of these kits. I'm sure you could make the scenario work either way with either kit, but there's a mirror version of this kit. This may actually be the mirror version. It's the the alternate version, but it's got the scaffolding entrance, or the little causeway that comes out on the left side. In addition, there should be the rolling stock for the left-hand side of the board, along with the track. We got some straight track, and then if you did not see the pictures that Carl posted up on the graph paper that actually had the actual layout of the boards that they went ahead and made, on the northwest corner, even though it starts with two tracks, they actually merge together, and that was only apparent to me from the hand-drawn renders that Carl had posted up in the 7TV Productions group. I'll probably post a pickup within this video of that to show what I'm talking about. But you're also going to need, for the little outbuildings, the factory, there's also the industrial factory bundle number 1, I-009. And you can see these are made up of several little buildings that combine together in this particular photo to make essentially, what is that, 2 buildings or maybe 3? It's hard to tell whether those these two here are connected. But in the scenario themselves, they're going to be broken down into the individual buildings. So I'm going to finish selecting the kits for scenario 1, and then I'll actually jump into the building themselves. Okay, I think I've picked all the kits that I'm going to need. A little change in venue here. I'm at the move to the kitchen table. The again factories that we just discussed, some straight track, the split point pack. You can also get the train kit that will come with the Penier, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, steam tank engine, which is not in there. I mean, you could use it on there. I think this is a French or some kind of European engine that would not necessarily be appropriate in New England. But this pack also came with 4 pieces of different rolling stock, and that was the main reason to buy the kit. So again, looking at scenario 1, I believe all of these kits will get you everything except for the fencing, the crates, and the 2 cars. I don't have the 2 cars from the Kickstarter, and I don't think they're up on the site yet as far as Sarissa or Crooked Dice, but I could be wrong. But I'm going to go ahead and crack open the big kit and get started. Okay, large factory, I-010. Got some trash bags down here. My hobby room is currently in shambles, so I'm doing this at a table in the kitchen. I've got some other supplies that I would recommend. I've got a utility knife, some files for the edges, some painter's tape, rubber bands, clamps, clips are good too. I've got some of those, but the tape seems to work better for me. I also have some Eileen's tacky glue. Whoops. And this is I believe a PVA, a polyvinyl acetate based glue like wood glue or Elmer's glue all would be. This one has some initial tackiness or stickiness that kind of helps things hold together at the beginning while it's drying. I've also got some super glue gel just in case. I've got my hobby blade, and then even though I usually use foam, I just have some 3/8 inch naps. Usually I use the foam rollers little tray with the roller for it, my trusty guidebook, and then I've also got some Zinsser. Whoops, this tripod costs like $2, so I probably apologize for how unstable it is. This is Problem Surface Sealer. It's for drywall and whatnot that is going to have issues with it, so you're trying to get it sealed. But I primarily have been working with a lot of pre-painted kits, your Black Site Studio, Foreground, War Cradle, that kind of stuff. The Sarissa ones, obviously you get much more kit for much more money, so I'm certainly not complaining, but these are quote-unquote raw MDF. I believe Sarissa says that you can go right to primer on top. Anytime I'm using the unpainted MDF, I do like to give it a coating though to make sure it's not going to soak in, especially if I'm going to be using any rattle cans or an airbrush. It just will take forever if the MDF is thirsty and is soaking it up. So that is what that is for. So let's take a look at what you're actually getting in the kit. Whoa, earthquake. Have to get used to that. All right. First two sheets, obviously very important. These are going to be the instructions for putting the kit together. And then there's going to be a number of sprues. This looks like it's for a little overhead winch or whatnot. This is your oil board or cardstock. This is usually the detail stuff, the thin pieces. And then we've just got a boatload of the thicker MDF. I think there's one other sheet in here. Whoops, I'm reading pieces. That goes there. I want to keep these kind of in order. Well, at least not have the pieces flop out because they, as I get them all flopped out. Because the sprues are numbered or lettered, and so as you can see up here, if you let the pieces fall out, even though you can correspond them probably back together later, it is going to make for a more difficult project. But this kit itself, being so large, is comparatively pretty complicated, or at least has lots of parts. I guess having lots of parts doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a complicated or difficult build. This particular kit I've not built before. Whoops, and I'm dropping pieces again. So the first thing I'm going to end up doing with these MDF pieces, and the reason I have this plastic down, is I'm going to go ahead and give it a coat of the guards, like I said, to make sure that I've proofed both sides of these. When a laser goes through, you see these darker edges where, I don't know, like heats the resin or whatever. I've never needed to seal these. I mean, if anything, these things are, they don't soak up stuff even when you want them to. So the edges, I'm not going to worry about. I'm just going to be applying it to the front and the back. I'm going to be applying it while it's still on the sprue. It just makes it easier, waste less of the problem surface sealer. The only issue, and I don't think on Sarissa, it usually has a pretty good cut with the laser. On some companies, I've noticed if they've got a really thin one, if you overdo the surface sealer, it kind of fills in glues the sprue to the piece, and it can be problematic to get the pieces out later. So do be aware of that. All right, my can of guards is getting a little bit hit, so I did notice that it was a little thicker than it normally is, so I probably didn't seal the can as well as I should have. But what I'm doing now, like I said, is just going over. I've wrung out rather most of the product. This is way too thick here. If you're getting that white, that's probably way too thick. And again, if it's super viscous and you've got narrow cut marks, that's the kind of thing that'll go ahead and glue it together. So I'm just hitting all the screws like this. I'm going to hit them to avoid warpage. You basically, as a general rule, want to always go over both sides. So if there's any changes in humidity, etc., you're not going to get contraction or expansion unequal on one side or the other, which is going to cause the warpage. So I'm going to hit these all on one side, flop them down, and then as I go through, hopefully they'll start drying, and I can flop them over and do the other sides. Okay, so as I'd indicated, the guards that I was using was a little bit thicker than it normally is. This is the normal consistency here. It's a little watery, but it was giving a little bit of texture to the sprues, to the surface. So I went ahead and put on the proper roller, which is the foam roller, which is the quote-unquote smooth finish. It is something you could do on purpose. I mean, use a higher nap if you wanted to get a little bit of a texture to the sprues. I'm a little bit thick here. I guess you could do the same thing with the paint, but the higher nap roller is gonna, if you were doing a Western, Adobe kind of thing, then you might want that texture. Because this is kind of brick and kind of not. I guess it would have been fine. The pieces that I did are fine, but I did want to do it a little bit smoother. So went ahead and switched to the low nap. I will also point out, if you are going to paint the buildings only after they are assembled, you probably don't want to utilize this procedure, only because when they're sealed, they're painted, etc., the glue is not going to do as good of a job. If you're using wood glue or PVA or something like that, when you glue raw MDF to raw MDF, that's a really good bond. I am not super concerned about how strong the bond is going to be, because I need to, much like the other pre-painted buildings, because it's easier for me to paint these things before they're assembled, so I can paint the inside, outside, put any kind of patterning or texture or something like that on that I would like to. Getting inside the building and painting in the corners and stuff like that is just not for me. So because I'm going to paint everything before I assemble it, that's why I'm also sealing it. If you were going to put them all together first, you could still use guards or similar kind of sealant. It's thin enough that if you were using, it's water-based, you could probably thin it a little bit more. But if you were using like a Badger Patriot 105 with, with the 0.7 millimeter needle and nozzle, I think you could probably shoot this stuff. Might need to crank it up, to 30 or so and thin it down a little bit, but I think it would airbrush fine. But at this point, as you can see, I'm just kind of hitting the whole sprue. If there's some dry spots and stuff you can see here, obviously there's not a piece that I'm going to be punching out there, so I'm trying to just concentrate on the pieces that are actually going to come out. But I'm about a little less than halfway through. Once I get these all done on the one side, like I said, I've got to flop them and hit them all again anyway. Okay, I got the shaky cam going again. Because it's taken a while to dry, I'm going to go ahead and jump into opening the second pack and hopefully start getting those done as well. The one thing I will point out as well, on the other factory, those oil board pieces, the ones with the windows and whatnot, those entire pieces are going to slide on the inside of the factory. So you're not just going to want to be coating the little windows and doors themselves, because the sheet itself is going to go in there. Now, granted, only the windows and doors are going to be exposed, at least on the front side, but the back side, because it's essentially going to be, I know I should probably do this later with the actual pieces. If this is the actual hard MDF I should do it this way because this is the thicker part. If this is the actual hard MDF, the I'm not even getting this in frame. The frame that the screw that has all the windows slides in like that. So when you look at it from the inside, you're still going to see the back, and that is still going to need to be painted. So I would suggest coating both sides only so it doesn't warp or anything like that, because you're going to get the equal push-pull either way, whereas if you just coat one side, that's how you usually do get the puckering and whatnot. But in any event, in opening up the industrial factory bundle number 1, you're actually going to find factory unit number 2, 3, 4, the factory power room, and then the warehouse. So as I said, in this scenario, the buildings are actually going to be presented this way, somewhat separated, rather than all together, as you'll see on the package. But I will go ahead and get these things opened, and I'm going to start coating these as well, just because I can't do the back side of the other ones yet, because they have not dried. As I move these interiors, you can see when you hit them, and again, I'm putting a light coat on here, this stuff is so thin, almost immediately after hitting it, you can see how it's starting to pucker the other way and kind of warp. So again, that's the main motivation for hitting both sides of these, even though most of this stuff is going to be all covered. As I roll each piece, I just stick it down on the floor on a trash bag to dry. Usually by the time you cycle through, you're ready to do the next side. When you've got the guards just on one side, it may bow, as you can see here. But once you do both sides, it'll essentially bend back and it'll be good to go. Okay, I'm now left with this stack. I went ahead and did all the train pieces, track pieces, etc. And just so you have an idea, it's basically, once it's dry, you're not going to be able to see it. Maybe you can see a little bit of a sheen there. The oil board, or the cardstock, or whatever you want to call this stuff, it stays noticeably darker. But you can see that once it's been done on both sides, it's now flattened out, and I can move on to actually base coating these. So I'm gonna be doing a similar process, but obviously with paint rather than with the sealer. And that's indicated I'm going to go ahead and get most of it painted. Some of the trim stuff I may not paint until it's actually on in the weathering, etc., etc., until the building is actually assembled. But for the basic colors, I am certainly going to do my best to get them all painted before I even begin assembly. I'm going to go ahead and start off with the oil board pieces. I'm going to be using a very old bottle of Delta Ceram Coat Storm Gray. I know these typically in the pictures are black. I just feel like if they're black, some of the details, like on the doors and whatnot, you're just not going to be able to see. And I could go back in there and tweak them up a little bit with highlights and stuff. I just think it'll be easier to go with a middle to maybe slightly darker gray, and then I'm hoping some of the detailing shows up. If not, maybe I can hit it with a wash. We'll figure it out. Probably going to go ahead and try the roller. I don't know if I'll do the roller again on here. It's a little bit messy. I may try to see how much mileage I can get with the brush. I know on here, technically, just around the windows and stuff are what are actually going to show, so I don't need to cover the entire thing. The back, on the other hand, is going to need to be painted more entirely, because it's going to be, like I said, these oil board pieces, I'll use this small one as an example, go on the inside of the piece of the heavier stock, and so these kind of peek through, but on the inside, this is what you're going to see. I know these aren't a lot of the rest of the buildings are more basic and they're not really super detailed inside. Maybe you're not supposed to see inside. A lot of war games you don't play inside as much. There's just rules where you're occupying or not. This scenario, obviously, the objectives are indeed inside the factory, so I want this to be somewhat presentable when I get these taken care of. One thing I'm going to do before I paint is these little annoying pieces of board, the square, they shouldn't be too hard. They can, I guess the issue though is that, oh, that one came out. You got to be real careful that you don't tear the mullions when you're I mean, you can tear them a little bit, but you got to basically twist to ensure that you don't trash the whole thing up. But go through and do that. Some of these have some bigger pieces here that come out as well. And then I'm going to try hitting with the paint. All right, the pieces have been cleared out, at least for this first piece. I just noticed as well these doors actually open. They're cut on two of the sides. Obviously, opening and closing those would those probably come right off. I'm not sure if maybe a piece of cloth tape on the back of that to make it a more permanent hinge would be worthwhile or not. Something I'll experiment with later. I've got a little blister I've cut apart here, blister packaging rather, and 1/2 cent my paint. And there's my water, and I'm gonna see how this works. All right, for at least the major large factory, or whatever this thing is called again, large factory. I've gotten all the oil board painted, kind of slapped it on and around. But the way this will work, this is the corresponding wall. I'll try to line this up just so you get the general idea. Especially bad at it apparently. It'll line up, so you'll have the main color of the walls there, and then you'll have the gray showing through there, and then I'll, in the same gray, go in and detail these 2D little ledges there above the door. In some complicated kits, you'll have the ones that'll stick in, etc. The rest of the kits, again, a little bit more user-friendly as far as assembly. You don't have to put all those things in. A little bit more 2D, but for the price, no complaints at all as far as that goes. And then once it's glued on the other side, or glued to this, I think the way these things key in, the oil board will go almost all the way to the edge. So my interior color rather is what I'll be slathering over here. I'm probably going to do this in a as dark if not darker color. There's no interior detailing on the doors, windows, etc. So it'll probably kind of blend together better if I can just roll a dark color over it in its entirety. But from here, I'm going to need to pick my exterior color. That is to say, what I'm going to do here. There's a little trim color as well with the brick here, and I know some people will, draw the brick patterns on. I'll maybe be doing a little bit of that, or at least hinting at it with a little bit of stenciling here and there. The studio version of this kit, you tend to see it in a bright red. It kind of looks like I thought there was a colored picture here, but maybe there isn't. As if it was a brick building, often used as like a Russian building, but it being what it is, I'm going to go for a colder color. I went ahead and finally picked the exterior color. Generally, you'll see this kit done in like a burgundy or a brick red. But because I wanted to convey more a look of being at night, I wanted it more desaturated, darker, and also it being an Innsmouth themed board. I want kind of introduce more cold colors, less warm. So I went ahead and took burgundy, gray, black, and purple. But as far as how the trim is going to work, the windowsills, which would be, I don't know, stone, concrete, I don't know what it is, perhaps closer to white in the daytime on the burgundy. I've got a kind of a mid-gray, which is looking pretty bright against this dark purple, which is making me a little bit nervous. But that's going to be the accent work. And so one of the sides you can see here, and again, I know it's kind of almost plain white on my phone there, but the darker gray, I did the same color on these interior pieces. As you know, these are going to flop like this. So when this is, and I'm lining this up extremely poorly. Apologies rather. I usually am working on these at 2 or 3 in the morning, which means I'm filming at 2 or 3 in the morning, and so my mind's not always there. So my apologies for fumbling around, but this is kind of how it's going to look, or at least you can imagine it from here over. I'll be introducing some rust and whatnot in these little vents at the top. May splash a little something on the mullions of the windows as well. And like I said, probably some oil washes down the edges and stuff just to get it more of a worn look that'll hopefully tamp it down. And may do some random splotching on here with some the airbrush. The very bottom platform, I did seal the bottom. Whoops, that's where that went. Hooked to the bottom or adhered to the bottom with paint. But this is supposed to just look like concrete, and obviously it's too uniform right now, but I'll probably put some cracks in there, some spills, etc. Kind of make it look a little more proper.
I also went ahead and rolled the roof pieces while they were still on the sprue, and then once assembled, went back to get any bits that I may have missed.
I've gone ahead and moved up to my hobby room because I'm going to be using some airbrushing for this portion rather, to get the buildings weathered. I'm going to start off by weathering the wood, the gantry, the steps, etc. That noise you're going to hear kicking on in the background is just my compressor. It is not a tankless. I recommend a tankless. If you are going to get a airbrush compressor, one thing I'm not going to probably do is have, I'm going to be doing it in short bursts, but this hood is essentially too loud. But I'm not going to be spraying too much, and I've got a mask I'm going to be wearing, so it shouldn't be entirely critical. This is all water-based. I'm not doing any oil-based, etc. But I'm going to start off using Minotaur Ghost Tints. This is just their brown. I'm going to go ahead and mix it up here in this Vortex mixer. I've done this a couple times before turning on the camera, so hopefully this thing is ready to go. Get this thing out of the way. And then what I'm going to be doing for the wood is not just spraying it directly, but rather using some of the airbrush stencils that I have to get it aged a bit. And the ones I'm going to be using, I can't remember who makes these. I'll try to put a comment in or voiceover over it or put in the comments, etc. But they're essentially these, delicate, as I recall, overpriced little frisketing things here that just let you get random globs, etc. I've got a couple different kinds of them, but these are the two that I'm going to be using just to get some kind of rot or staining on the wood. So I'm going to get the airbrush ready and then get going on it. I'm just going to be using a Badger Patriot 105 for this. As you can see, I've got the tint already in there. And, obviously this is just kind of my workhorse brush that I'll be using for all sorts of priming, base colors, maybe even some shading. But all you've got to do on this is just heavy. You can see it's kind of beating up on it. This may have been easier for me not to have sealed them in retrospect. But I think it's mostly because I'm just spraying a little bit too much. But you can see that it's just kind of giving me some random looks that I want to get it dirtied up. Ooh, too much again. As if, you know, water stains and whatnot. And I'm using just different parts of the frisket, so it'll get different looks. And I'm just going to kind of continue this across. Whoops. This one too, I can get little profiles if I want to kind of go on the side. You can see there that it gives you a nice negative edge there. Generally darker in some places as well. So I'll just be doing some overall spraying. Come back here with these to get some more of the amoeba shapes. And how much definition you want on the stain can be kind of modulated by how high you have it up. If you have it all the way down, pressed against the piece, you're going to get a harder edge. If you want it softer, in the same area, kind of hold it up a little bit. And, well, I guess you can't see. It's a little bit softer. I also left the, it also seems to depend how much of the tint you spray on, but you can really just change things up by having the angles be different, how much you put on, and of course, as I said, how close it is. Some of the spaces you can just kind of, whoops, I'm out. If you want to even up the whole thing just a little bit, like I said, you just give it an overall spray to kind of hold it together. And again, this is more just how filthy you want it to be. I think this thing needs a little bit more darkness down here on this edge. And I've ran out again already. I'm trying to see through the camera rather than actually looking, but what I'll often do as well is, again, I'm gonna get a couple more dark ones here. Whoop, that's spidered. I'm just gonna rub that off. But I will oftentimes kind of just down the edge get it a little bit darker. Give some definition to the edge. All right, well, and that essentially does it. I've got some other planks and stuff like that, but it's going to be more or less the same thing. So for the first building, nice and quickly, I'm essentially done. These are the stairs, and then the little above the stairs, that's what connects to the second floor. And then again, this is the second floor gantry. So I've got the wood done. I'm probably going to try using a little bit of the brown on the purple exterior as well, but then either use the dark black ghost tint or use this Death Shroud Clear, which is essentially the same thing in a Citadel product. but we'll see how that goes. So I started applying some of the brown. This time I'm using one of my bigger little friskets here. And as you can see, it's just starting to, whoops, add some randomness and some filth just to kind of break up the wall of purple. The MDF buildings tend to be fairly geometric, as you can imagine, to begin with, which can give them an overly kind of cardboard clean look, in my opinion. So I think it really helps to add stuff like this to make it look like it's not less like a toy. Like I said before, it's 7TV, so if it looks a little artificial, you know, you always have the excuse that it's the movie set. And I've got some black and some, it's really inconvenient here, I know, it's hard to get it in frame, and you can see the sheen on this thing is kind of throwing things off. This might need a better matte coat, but I'll use your show it on one of these smaller ones, but it's got upside down, not that it matters. But that's where I am. Again, kind of making it look old, decrepit, filthy, etc. And so I've got all of the sections pretty much done up, all the walls, I should say. And now I'm going to need to also do the same thing on the concrete foundation. And this one will be even easier as it's so big. I may just kind of leave it. Running out. And again, this is the Citadel version of the black or the gray or whatever it's. Alright, you can kind of see what that's doing. It's giving me just some little friskets do get stuck to your hand because of the wet. But you can get the idea. Obviously, how much you want to dirty this up is entirely a personal decision of how degraded you really want it to get. This is going to have some. This is going to have some terrain on that is actually down on the, you know, the pod. So even though this may look a little bit extreme as far as the amount that I'm putting down, I think it's going to be fine once I get the rest of the stuff on here. May add a little bit more, but again, the one thing I always like to do on these, as I said before, is to kind of, I don't know how it's coming up, kind of dark on the edge, or all the edges, I guess I should say. These are the vertices of the building anyway, so they would be shadowed, but it does look pretty good. All right, well, I got a little bit more to do on this thing, and I'll come back when I'm going to be doing the inside windows. Okay, so again, the sheen, it's really not, look at this. What if I move the light out here, does that help? Not really. Lighting is not great because it's inside this hood. But they actually say, well, you can kind of see how that's going to look. They say to glue these main pieces in first, then slide these in. Because these have to line up with these holes, though, that's making me really nervous that I'm not going to be able to get it in there properly. But I don't know. Maybe I should just have faith in the instructions. But the next step is actually assembling all these pieces that I just sprayed. All right, I'm back at the kitchen table. The thing I realized I forgot to do, other than probably get a good camera angle on that last segment, is there's some other purple pieces still on the sprue. I didn't do the chimney, and I didn't do any weathering on this little roof, but I'll be able to do the weathering on this roof when I do the weathering on the roof proper. So it would have just been nice when I had the airbrush out to hit them all at once. But essentially what I have now is the foundation piece. And again, I know the weird gloss on this, I'm probably gonna have to matte it down, is giving a weird finish in the weird sheen, I should say, in the camera. I got my stack of purple on the outside and gray on the inside pieces, and then I've got my oil board. And what the instructions indicate to do is to put all the outsides on first, then glue the insides on. So that's what I'm gonna do. We'll see how it works. I have put some Eileen's tacky glue across the bottom and on the tabs on each side. And so the hard thing about this is gonna be getting all of them to stay up. Again, I highly recommend the painter's tape for that. And I'm tempted just to try to do several at the same time, but I'm worried I'll have glue everywhere. I know this is the side that it goes to. Line up the tabs. Okay, well, that's not super duper helpful or stable. I'm just putting that cam behind there to keep that vertical. This next piece, I'm going to do the same thing. Hook them together. Obviously do all four sides, tape them together. Probably let it completely dry, but then start sliding these bad boys in. I got it put together. I just have a couple pieces of tape on it right now. It wasn't too bad, but you can kind of see pan back a little bit on this thing, how big this piece really is. I mean, that's a pretty big piece of terrain. Obviously, it's the central piece to the first chapter of Lurkers, and so this will be taking up probably the entire central board. It's still going to have the little, almost like an outbuilding attached to it here with the chimney, and then it's going to have the scaffolding that comes up and out. So let this dry a little bit, and then I'll get those inside pieces on. With tape removed, I have dropped these interior pieces in kind of in reverse order of how I'm going to raise them up, you know, kind of building a barn style. This one doing the same way this way. The reason I decided to do it that way is I don't want to slide them down. You know, when you've got I'm going to be placing the glue on the piece first, probably the inner piece. I want to be able to flop it up. I don't want to slide it down because that's going to smear glue up all over the windows. So we shall see how well this actually works. What I'm going to do is, and this is again the Eileen's tacky glue. I wouldn't imagine this would take a ton of glue. Nice thin piece. But I guess I'd rather have a little bit too much than not enough. Oops, I'm totally blacking that in the camera. So I've essentially just put it where you, oh, you know what, I should probably put a little bit, no. I'm just gonna put it in like this. We'll see how well it works. Important thing is gonna be to get it lined up once I get it pressed. And again, I'm working on this thing at night, so the light couldn't be worse. I had originally hoped to do this earlier today, but my power somehow went out for quite a while. All right, so I'm just gonna flop it up, flop each of them rather up like that, and then as you can see with this piece over here, this one actually came out pretty well, but the main thing I want to line up, aesthetically, the windows are important, but what's really important is that these holes line up where I'm actually going to be putting in the struts and the gantry and the crane and that kind of stuff. So I'll flop these other 4 up, and then that'll be that. I have now gotten most of the pieces weathered. That is to say that I'm using the little friskets or stencils or whatnot. I've been using that transparent black. But I need to matte this, knock the gloss down. It's hard to see some of the filth if you see like that, where it really catches the gloss. So I'd probably matte coat these down a little bit. What I'm doing right now, though, is I'm going to take just some black primer because I'm lazy and I don't want to thin any black paint. And I'm going to do a little bit more, I want it a little bit more opaque. As you can see, this is just a very light, black. Let's look at more of a gray. And I want to, whoops, I'm doing that again where you can't really see, as you can see in there. So this kit has 2 chimneys. And I'm basically just putting in the smoke. I'm going to hit it pretty opaque at the top. And down in. And then kind of fade it down low. And again, this is supposed to be kind of a fast and dirty project. That's the whole point. But you can see that it looks a lot more weathered, so I can get the appropriate. I'm just doing this so you can't see any brown inside. But other than matting it down, that's basically it. I've got most of the factory buildings put together now. I gotta get a little more on that rim. One piece of advice that you may or may not need, a little hint, I guess I should say more than anything. On the other chimney it was fine, but on this one, which is the smaller chimney that's on the main building, these rings, you gotta feed them down over the chimney. I was able to get this one on, which would be the last one because I'm sticking this one on, this one from the bottom. They would not go. They would not go no matter what. I'll do a little bit of touch up here, but I actually had to cut the rings. I just did a little diagonal slice in the corner and kind of, give me that extra room to slide them down. And then I basically did a finger clamp and then just super glued them. The other chimney, the big wide chimney that's on the power plant of the set of buildings that you can either build as one factory or in this scenario be used as the several factory outbuildings. Those went on no problem. So could be a user error kind of thing when I glued it together, but just a heads up.
I didn't record video of me putting the stairs together, but I did take some pictures. They're always a pain. I start off by putting the glue on one side. One side of the steps, I suggest kind of cutting the tabs into a wedge so they don't have to be as quite perfectly lined up. Once you get them all in, you're just going to take the other side and press it together. Easier said than done. This is when I realized that I had put them together option 2, which is technically backwards for this layout. But oh well.
All right, so I'm back filming. I'm doing it in the kitchen, as I may have indicated before. My hobby room, from those shots when you see me using the airbrush, I've got that. My hobby desk is one of those like really tall, like Bob Cratchit looking desks where you need a giant stool, or you just stand. So my tripod is not tall enough to normally give me good shots, as you may have seen when I was airbrushing and my hands were all over the place. So on top of that, because I basically film this stuff when the house is asleep, my wife did start the dishwasher before she went to bed. So I apologize in advance for that background noise. But essentially where we are now is most of the buildings have been built. They've got the inside, of course, painted. The outside, I've got some of that weathering sprayed on. On this particular unit, it's got some exterior stairs. One of the other ones does as well. Should we recall, we kind of airbrushed that filth on. This is all just the flat gray, as is this. These stairs I have backwards. Excuse me. At least in comparison to how the scenario goes. I've ordered another set of stairs that are, I think, substantially similar, so I can set it up this way. If you did put them together backwards, I started putting these together backwards. I hate putting stairs together, as I indicated. I could simply clip this piece off right here and glue it across there, and you'd be right back in it, so to speak. But for most of the use of this building, the reason I like this, again, the trucks drive through there and stuff like that, but I'm imagining some signage that can look good here, or maybe even across the top there, as far as the, Fisk's Bottling Company or whatnot. So I don't regret that choice per se, but if the scenario is having people run from this direction, I don't want them to necessarily be disadvantaged having to go down, up, and around, so I will be building another staircase. So that said, and I probably harped on that a little bit in the last one, the stairs are assembled. I've now put these, I guess they're exhaust vents, these little chimneys on the sides. There's also one over here. Power plant on this one does open up. Again, I need to mat some of this down. It's got a little bit of gloss. It's a nice feature that you can put, guys in there, and there's a door that goes from there into the main area. But this should really probably be like mostly the power plant inside. You know what I'm saying? The chimney would be going down. People aren't going to be hanging out in there conventionally, at least as far as the narrative would go. So let me move these pieces off here. And then as far as the main building itself, I've now got the crane and the gantry walkway there. I didn't film that. It would have just been a bunch of me swearing anyway. For this, you just follow it step by step. These are very spindly, these pieces that go through here. I did break them at least once. It's got the flat gray that I put on there. I'm going to be putting some additional paint, which I'll cover a little bit later. And then the other part of the gantry crane, this piece, goes back and forth, and then this goes back and forth, so I can basically, service anywhere on the factory floor. For the scenario for Lurkers, that is not called for, nor is this frame here, so I would suggest not gluing it in. It sits down, it sits comfortably on these supports. Let me see, am I getting them in there? These supports right here, there. And it holds it up pretty well. Putting this railing on, this railing was a pain even to get out of the sprue, and I cracked it once, had to glue it back. Getting these in, these supports are fine. Getting the actual gantry walkway in was a little bit nerve-wracking. It feels like it's going to break when you're snapping it in. The same thing with this ladder that's attached to the gantry that goes up. You've got to kind of click it in, but it snaps in there rather tight. So that was not too bad. Again, I don't want to go over. I didn't do the step-by-step on those. I do have some photographs that I'll splice in here of the items completed. As I said, these will get painted a little bit. I'm thinking maybe a dull green or something. I want to keep it pretty washed out, but they're not going to be necessary for the Lurkers. So this is probably going to be painted the dark gray that it is. I'll probably do some metallic on the actual rail, and then some shiny or shinier metallic on the tops where the friction is going to be wearing it all the time. But the step we're here to look at right now is going to be weathering the gray. Now the gray I basically have on here, is like the exterior paint over the metal. So we're going to be doing some chipping. And to do the chipping, the first step is going to be using just some black. And the reason I'm using black is just, and again, I don't know how they made factories back then as far as the enamel paints and stuff like that they may have put on over the metal. But, and I'll do this section first. The gray, I want something darker to represent probably the primer. So we're going to just be doing some standard sponge chipping on the roof here, and then I'll move on to some of the other spots as well. But generally, you're going to want, and I know some people will do sponge chipping with something lighter. I generally like to go darker. You can go right with like a rust color or even metal if you wanted to. If it's supposed to be something that's new, that's been scratched, or something like, I don't know, like Space Marine armor or whatever, that maybe it's not supposed to rust, it's non-ferrous. You'd want a, you don't want a bunch of rust or corrosion, you just want to show the paint scraped away. But for this, and again, I'm using my cheap hobby paints because there's no reason to use my model paints. I'm going to go ahead and start doing the chipping on the roof. Got some foam. This is some pluck foam. And I usually like to get it a little bit random. As to say, not just the super generic. And I'll use the bottom of my little palette here. But normally I get a paper towel, and it's not quite like dry brushing. You don't want a ton of it. And all you're going to essentially do is start touching the sponge down, and the high points, which would be the points, you can randomly, I'm putting a couple just, random here and there, but the high points are what should get most of the paint, and that is what would get the most wear as well. So as you can see, hopefully, right here, the more exposed, or the higher the point, the more black it's getting, and so that's what's going to look like the primer showing through. And so I'm also going to, as it gets lower or less paint on there, that's when it's a good time to do some of the random splotching and whatnot on it, is these planar sides and stuff like that. If there's a bunch of paint, you're going to get these extreme dark spots, which is what you don't want. So when it gets a little bit light, and you can press real hard every now and then if you want to get a giant piece. And then what I'm going to end up doing is going back over some of this black with either a rust color or a metallic to have the material actually showing through, so it kind of gives the illusion that this was metal. They put some kind of metal bonding primer on top, and then painted it gray to protect the metal. So I'm going to go over this a little bit more, and then I'll come back. Okay, I've gotten most of the chipping done. I hope that's showing up okay in the video. But basically, again, it's the parts that are sticking up. Do some kind of random blotting, but it's going to be the rain, the hail, the whatever. So the pieces that are aiming up and sticking out are the ones you're going to want to weather the most. And so for the black, this one's probably done. I realize now I didn't really need to do these sides. They're going to, it keys down into this, and so these block them. Some practice, but other than that, didn't do much for it. I'll go ahead and put this back in. That already looks a little bit better. Now we're going to do the same thing with the stairs. We're obviously not going to be doing any chipping on the wood. We've already done that with the aging and whatnot with the airbrush. So getting rid of, switching up pieces, just these things will sometimes get, these little pieces of foam will obviously get matted a little bit with the paint because you're constantly mashing them down. I want even less on this one, so I'm gonna dab it on this paper towel. And then essentially what you want to do on things like this generally is just the same thing where you're doing the corners, but you also want to think about how it may be wearing. So you figure, hey, the handrails, they're probably getting a lot more wear than other parts. So on the handrails, as you can see here, I want a couple spots that I'm hitting straight down where it's totally, worn the paint away. And then on the sides, we're going to be doing some of the blotting. Here I'm doing it on the bottom, and you think that wouldn't necessarily get the same wear on the bottom because nobody's touching it, of course. But that's going to have the environmental, the standing water, all that kind of stuff is going to give that a little bit more wear than would be typical if it was anywhere else in the scaffolding. So I'm just blotting this. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is stay true to being, quote unquote, random on this stuff. And weathering is one of those things that the more you put on, the better it looks, until it doesn't. That is to say, once you go overboard, and you can put a couple big globs here and there, but once you go overboard, it's just like we were adding rust. All of a sudden, it looks silly. So sometimes the biggest trick is knowing when to stop. But I'm going to go ahead and finish chipping on this, and then the I don't know, is that the bridge, whatever you call that part of the stairs, and then I'll be back to take a look at it. I might switch this up a little bit as well. When you get this one, might be a little bit too pointy. That when I'm trying to do my random dots, I need to get a little bit more random, a little bit flatter. I'm getting kind of some little triangles that are could potentially repeat with that part right there, but we'll see how it goes. All right, I'm taking the camera off the sticks here just so get a little better idea, but you can see dabbed it here and there. You want to concentrate on those corners and edges or any place else that would have typically more wear, and without succumbing to the temptation to totally overdo it. And next part I'm going to do the same way is going to be this ladder. And again, I'm going to hit the edges, but I'm also going to go down the center where the maintenance folks' shoes and whatnot would obviously wear more than normal. But once I do that, I think I need to then just do the same thing on these, I don't know what those are. Like I said, they're kind of like chimneys, little ventilation pieces. And then this particular building will be done except for just the gantry-way, and then of course the crane. I'm going to need to go back. I'm going to put some additional colors on it as well, but we'll get it chipped as well. All right, I'm taking the camera off the sticks here just so get a little better idea, but you can see dabbed it here and there. You want to concentrate on those corners and edges or any place else that would have typically more wear, and without succumbing to the temptation to totally overdo it. And next part I'm going to do the same way is going to be this ladder. And again, I'm going to hit the edges, but I'm also going to go down the center where the maintenance folks' shoes and whatnot would obviously wear more than normal. But once I do that, I think I need to then just do the same thing on these, I don't know what those are. Like I said, they're kind of like chimneys, little ventilation pieces. And then this particular building will be done except for just the gantry-way, and then of course the crane. I'm going to need to go back. I'm going to put some additional colors on it as well, but we'll get it chipped as well. All right, and the gloss and the paint's still drying. It's making it look a little bit off here, but you can see where down the middle we've chipped and worn the paint off, and then up down the sides where the workman's hands, would be wearing it the same way. Not worrying about it at the top, which everything is just covered by soot and whatnot that we've already airbrushed on. All right, I believe all the black chipping is done for this particular building now. I decided not to repaint the crane pieces, I don't want anything too flashy in there to take anything away. So I did go ahead and chip the, I don't know what this is called, I guess the left right of it. And then I chipped the little platform on there. And I don't know if you can see it here, but the front plates and whatnot. I'm still gonna hit these wheels with metallic. I'm gonna do black on the cable itself, and then the hook I'll do a straight metallic as well. Wheels are on this as well for the metallic, and then I'll put the metallic, as I said, straight across here, because there'll be no paint or rust or anything built up there because of the constant going back and forth and the wear. And then on this, as you can hopefully see here, I've got the sponging done there, and on these two as well. The one thing I would recommend is probably before putting the gantry-way in there, I'm getting probably some bad shadows here, but I did go in and chip the ladder, the railing, etc. there, but I think it would look, or you could do it equally well, if not better, with very little risk of breaking anything and not having to contort your arms if you were to go ahead and just get that painted up before you put it in. So the last bits that I'm going to do on this for the actual black is going to be blackening in the tops of these things, and then blackening the belt here on the crane. I'll probably also do a little bit, I might use a dark gray because this is a little bit lighter, or I may stay with the black, not decided yet, and do a little bit on these windowsills that are a little bit too bright and clean. But then it'll just be a matter of doing the metallic. Oh, I forgot to say, I did, probably hard to see here, I did some chipping on the crane frame as well. And again, this top will certainly get the metal treatment where the carriage is going back and forth, wearing that off. So I'm gonna grab a brush and I guess I don't need to be too careful with this because most of the parts that are directly adjacent I'm going to be hitting with metal, other than maybe the one part of this hook, this casing on the hook. But, and again, I apologize, the lighting is not the best at the kitchen table, but I'm just not very good at getting the camera to shoot anything up in the hobby room. But I'm gonna go ahead and get the black on this, and then probably get the metal on, and then just come back for a final look at this building. The same thing I did on these, I'm going to have to do with all the outbuildings, but it's the same technique, just ad nauseum. The only thing I would mention, if you're going to be doing a little detail sponging, you can certainly break off a smaller, maybe not this small, but a pea-sized piece of sponge, and then either use tweezers or you can stick it in a straw and just kind of poke at it that way. But, whatever's easier.
Here you can see the chipping on the all-metal staircase. There's no wood on this one. And then here's some additional chipping on the crane rails for the crane assembly.
Okay, I've done the metallic, and again, I'm not sure how well it's catching here, but you can see how when you put the metal and you kind of ease it down into the chipping, it kind of gets that three-dimensional look to the chipping. Hopefully you can see the metallic showing there, but I've got it across the rails there. I've got it across the rails on the main insert, and then even though this will probably be washed down, and I maybe leave it brighter in the centers, I'll wash down these other gears. The metallic kind of really shows off the granular cutting of the laser on it, but you can get a general idea of how it's going to look. This black is also drawing very light black, compared to the gray. It's matte with like a sheen. It's almost like a satin, and I think it makes it look grayer than it is. But the metal is now done. I still need to decide whether I'm going to go back over and do some rust into the black, quote unquote primer chipping on some of these items. I probably will. But I think the next step is going to be to go ahead and get the chipping done. So get some wear on these window sills. Again, I may use a black, I may use dark gray, or a mix to get like a really dark gray, because this is like a storm gray, which is not super dark, obviously. This is a much lighter gray, so I'm not. I think the darker, the black, as I already went over, is pretty light on this, so that may work out fine. The other thing I need to do, the other doors I had slit before I put in there. But this one I assembled before cutting the doors open, so I am going to have to go and get these doors open, because I did on the Facebook group a bit ago question whether the doors are supposed to be open or closed, and they're supposed to be openable. Not line of sight at the beginning, shooting in and out of the doors, but they're definitely going to need to be open for this scenario. So I'll probably end up may come back and do some of the rusting over the chipping. At some point as well, I may do some oil washing or just some water-based rust washes, kind of going down, like an oil-based grime wash, or the water, like a Vallejo, makes a couple different rust washes that I may do some streaking, or like I said, use the oil-based streaking grime to again get a little bit more texture. This scenario I need to be running a demo on this month though, so I don't know. That may have to be something that I come back and do, because I'm not sure I'm actually going to have time to get that squared up before the October 7 TV day, but we'll see. All right, last time I went and I, excuse me, went ahead and did the sponge chipping, which left the stairs like this. What I'm going to be doing now is taking some red iron oxide, which is of course rust colored, and again I'm using my cheap Delta Serum Coat. I think I paid $1 for these when I originally purchased them, and they're many years old at this point, but I'm gonna get some of that paint on my nice cheap brush. And essentially what I'm gonna be doing is filling in where it would actually be rusting. So again, the gray represents like the outer coat, and the very darker gray or black here is the primer. And so if you chip through the
paint itself in the primer, you're going to get down to the metal, and the metal is going to oxidize or rust. Same thing, obviously, once it gets down through it. So what I'm doing, whoop, I just totally nailed the camera there. And I'm starting it on a big one here, but I'm kind of doing a concentric circles. So the innermost part is going to be the rust color. And for the most part, I'm trying to kind of stipple it on rather than paint it on. So I know this is very bright compared to the rest of it, but that should also give it a little bit of something standing out. But most of it's not going to be as extreme. Like here on this edge here, it's the same kind of thing. You don't want to necessarily just start scrubbing it across, or you're going to get too clean of a line. So I'm dabbing that. And the orange will certainly settle down a little bit, but you can see what I'm saying where I'm getting too much on this brush, where you can see the stippling is going to make it look like there's some exposed metal. And then I'm kind of pushing it up to lighten it. And much like a wash, how you push and pull on it, you can control how it settles in. But also, if you add more water, you're going to get less of a rust effect, or at least it's not going to be as bright, if that's what you're looking for, because it's going to be, excuse me, more transparent, and so the black or the dark gray is going to come through. And so what you can see, what I've done right here is I've put it down by stippling like I normally would, and then kind of roll my finger through it to get any of the excess off. And it's not just the edges, you can stipple out into the middle as well. Like I said, for this effect, I'm trying to mostly just go over where I've already sponged on the black. Gotta get some dry tip here on my brush, which I should. I'm using a brush that's probably a little bit too pointy for this. And of course using cheap paint, and not, also probably not thinning it quite enough. But the nice thing about the little point is you want to go in here and do some of these dots as well. But you get the idea. And I'm going a little bit slower here than I need to be, because I'm trying to look at it through the phone, you know, the camera at the same time. But I'm probably taking it out of focus. But the other one that was going on in the outbuildings, this is an example of kind of how it's going to start coming out
towards the end. And the light's not doing the best job. This one also has metal steps. So with these wear points going down the actual front of the stairs, the other one was wood, obviously, it's going to give you more opportunity to do, even more rust. But this one, and again, some stipples here and there. Get a little bright, you can give it a little bit of tamping with the finger. But you get the idea. And here it's not even showing up here on the camera in all the spots of the same degree. I've varied this how much I've thinned, so at least in person I'm getting some brighter and darker rust. You could use different color excuse me, oxide paints to get your newer rust, your older rust. It'll darken and whatnot on your older rust to get much more of a brown, because this is terrain, and the whole, well, not the whole point, but the main point in using these techniques is to make it look good, but make it look good, at least good in my opinion, and make it look good fast. I, again, am more likely to just vary how much paint I put on, and what the opacity of that paint is, rather than try to go for a bunch of different colors of paint. But again, even when I'm kind of riding the edge, I'm doing more of a stippling than any kind of actual strokes, because you want it to stay rough. And so, as I said, this one I've worked over a little bit, so it's it's almost done. I'm gonna have to do a lot more on this staircase that I had just started when I was filming. No, essentially everything that I did the chipping on. There's some sponging that we did on the windowsills and stuff, which is more supposed to be a filth or wear, etc., which I'll obviously not be putting rust on that, because that is not ferrous, it's not metal. And this one is going to take the longest just because it's the biggest, baddest, etc. Keep in mind too, if you don't want to do the multi-layer where you have like the paint and the primer showing, you can just go in and use the rust-colored sponge and just start hitting it immediately, and that is certainly a lot faster, though it does not give quite the same effect. And again, the sponging itself is pretty quick. Going back with the brush over it though, obviously is not as fast as sponging. So if you want to do the multi-layer, it is going to take you more than twice as much time. So I guess there's some cost-benefit analysis and law of diminishing returns there. I'm going to go ahead, because I started it this way, and go ahead and finish it. But whether it's worthwhile to the individual, I certainly leave up to you. I've now hit, excuse me, the staircases and whatnot. And I went ahead, this light's bad because it's, I should take this thing off the sticks as it were here. Only through the camera am I seeing here. Yeah, it looks a little patchy. We get a little bit of orange connecting those. It's actually kind of increasing the light. But you get the idea. You can put as much or as little into it, but again, the whole point is to go really fast to try to crank terrain out. So I'll still need to go back and hit the several other parts on the buildings themselves, but a little dark there, but it's coming along.
Here's a few close-ups of the rust being added and how it's added in concentric shapes inside the quote-unquote primer layer. I I didn't record myself making the outbuildings, as they are essentially just small versions of the big building. But I pretty much did all the same effects on there. On the roof side, I did some of the additional filth. On some of these, I haven't done the chipping on all the metal, or like on the mullions of the windows. In some of them, I have. But in this next shot here, you'll see the roof. It has the chipping and it has the sprays on it. And then here you can see a building where the horizontal windows are chipped. And here you can see a better view of the chipping on those vent stacks or chimneys.
I am now on to the train yard. Earlier this evening, I went ahead and dealt with the track split point. You only need, I believe, this one comes in a 2-pack, and then some straight track comes in a 6-pack. And I have since broken up these sprues. Whoops. But all I essentially did was paint the rails so far. No, only I'll say be careful punching these bad boys out. They're a little bit thin, but these are going to get a little treatment to make them weathered wood, and then the rails go down on top. So did these in the standard gray I've been using. Weather those up with some washes, and we'll probably polish up the top with an actual metallic for the worn part. They've got all these little connectors and other fun things to punch out as well that connect them, but very self-explanatory compared to almost anything else. You can see here where the rails just pop down, and then these are the connectors, and then almost the same thing on the other one. So I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole on that. But what I am going to be doing tonight, or this morning as the case may be, is actually working on the train. I've gone ahead and went over these in gray, as you can see from, got my roller here. And I believe it calls for 4 pieces of rolling stock. I bought the full train just because it was cheap to get the whole thing together, or cheaper. I'm not going to be putting together the engine because that's not part of the setup. But I have the high aggregate wagon here. I've got the low aggregate wagon. I've got the flatbed and the goods wagon. I think a tanker car may be one of the ones that Carl actually used, or the play testers. But again, if I ordered the one train all together at a discounted price, these are the ones that I got. So these are the ones that I'm going to assemble. The thing that's going to be a little bit tricky about these is tomorrow I have a playthrough for Chapter 1, which I need these for. It's not a playable demo by with people that have signed up like we'd normally do. It's just me and one of the other guys that runs the demo day. So we're trying to get ourselves familiar with it. So I'm not going to have time to fully complete these, that is to say paint them, etc., prior to, but I do want them to be there at least in as much to make the scenario playable, just so we can go through it, that way if players have questions, etc. So I'm going to build them tonight, probably build all of them, but leave the trim off, that way I can hit the final colors on these with the wood. I'm probably going to weather up pretty well. I haven't decided on a color yet though, so I'm all the metal bits again. I'm starting with my dark gray, and I've hit those with the roller, but I'm undecided on what color or colors I'm going to be using for the wood paneling. So that's where I'm at right now. But I'm gonna go just grab one of these kits. Let me see, 9, 10, 2, 4. It looks like the goods wagon is the lowest number, so I'm gonna start with that one. The goods wagon appears to have 4 sprues. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see, I don't know what I'm probably gonna have this be more bare wood and aged again, so I didn't hit that with the roller. These are the only real sections I'm going to be doing initially on this one. because these trim pieces and probably even the roof, I'll probably wait until I decide what color. Most of these I assume are going to go together fairly similarly. This one is the most complicated. Again, it has little micro print that I'm not very good at seeing or reading rather, but the main part of these all seem to have the same kind of chassis, and so I'm gonna go ahead and throw it together. It's a lot of stacking and whatnot like it was for the factory crane, so I probably won't go into it too deep unless there's something of note as far as how irritating or how easy something was to put together. So I'm gonna start punching these things out, and we'll see what's what. All right, well, I'm never good with these things. These little axles, it's supposed to be one piece. As you can see, it's two. I even used this flat file to try to punch it through to not break it, but that didn't work. This could be a function of the fact that I paint them ahead of time, and some they're stuck more in the sprue than they should be. But glue it back together, and then I guess I'll put an onward. What usually works is to have something a little bit softer, not that you can push down, but it's not going to stress the piece. But whatever I'm doing is not working tonight. All right, well, a couple other pieces broken as well. This will probably be a little nightmarish because I think, yeah, this is going to be the process for all of them. But essentially, this layout right here, I have right here. Oh, for God's sakes! I should have known that was going to happen. What I've brilliantly done here is used this other little piece as a bed for this thing to dry on. So it would be flat, but instead it glued itself down, and I've destroyed it taking it off. So this is going pretty well. And somehow, well, I should have used PVA or some kind of wood glue probably. Now it's sticking to me. This is, don't do this late and tired like I am. I'm a mess. I'm making it worse with each second. So this is kind of gray on gray, but I've got it laid out. I'm going to try to just go through and get the main chassis bottom built there, and we'll see what's what. Glue inner wheel. I'm trying to see if there's anything that's loose fit the wheel assemblies. And of course they've numbered and labeled this stuff, but the sprues don't have it again, but it's so they can reference in the little steps which one they're in particular talking about. So well, like I said, it is what it is. Upward and onward. I'm going to just dig into this thing. I'm probably going to have some more broken pieces on the other ones as well, but it is what it is. I got to get them together. Well, that was a roundly negative experience. Getting these little rings onto the peg and getting them glued in. I still having problems with it. I mean, it looks pretty good. You get little breaks and whatnot on there. See that broken axle I did. So, I mean, it happened. I better not put pressure on that. This looks like a flake rather than an actual glob of paint. But, anyway, I'm thinking about maybe just building the other 4 chassis all at once now that I've gotten the experience just to get through, because that seems like that's going to be the evil part. Get everything lined up as it's supposed to be was rough. It was rough, and I think the rest of it's going to be pretty smooth sailing. So I am going to go
I think just build the bottom of every single one of these things. Popping the pieces out is a pain. Whatever these little sticks are supposed to go, you know, the little MDF, I'm always feeling like they're mashing and deforming rather than sticking through the hole as it's supposed to. If you don't push it hard enough, you've got a problem. If you push it too hard, you've got a problem because it'll just destroy. So that's the issue I'm dealing with. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and just put all the chassis of the car together and then worry about building the cars up from there, because from there, this one again is really complicated comparatively with some extra doors, etc. But the other ones are, you know, much simpler. This one's simpler still. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully I'll get into a groove, as it were, and be able to bang these things out, because it's already tomorrow morning and I've got 3 more cars to do to be able to set up the board for the scenario run through. Okay, well, that was straight traumatic. It took me literally hours to build 4 of these things. Breaking axles and stuff like that didn't help. Trying to get them snapped into here was always a pain. These thin pieces here, even with practice, I was still, along with the axles, sometimes breaking them when I was punching them out. Threading these little circular pieces onto these small little, supposed to be square but not quite, nubs, excuse me, was also horrible. Surprisingly, I think it was the most irritating to me, and the thing that was just, unbelievable, was getting the wheels, lined up in both sides. I mean, no matter what I did, and maybe I was missing something fundamental, but my goodness, was that extremely frustrating. So I have 4 of them. They're almost identical. These, I'll have the sides. I guess the only one that's different is this. I think this is the low. Oops. This is the low boy that just has the little edges stacked. It's kind of like the flat car. The rest of them all pretty much look the same with these little tabs. So it shouldn't matter, I wouldn't think, which one I use for what. I have to put the walls on, but yeah, those were again, part of it may be that it's 3:30 in the morning, but man, that was surprisingly challenging and irritating. But upward and onward, I guess. Only other thing I still need to do tonight is just put some of these tracks together. So I'll go ahead and do that. And when I say tonight, I guess it's already this morning. I'm going to be using this stuff in about 9 hours. So I'll try to punch through. But man, super annoying. These railroad ties are obviously going to remain brown, so the only thing I really need to do is punch these things. No. It's probably because it's late. I'm not even sure how this thing exactly goes together, but these thin pieces, somewhat refreshingly, are not breaking, which was my experience for the last couple hours. But those other bits, so I don't know why I'm so bad at figuring out how these go. Okay, that looks promising. Yeah, probably right.
That looks right. I'm just going to run these two down here. Ooh. And again, I know some of the complications for this may be because I'm pre-painting. It's making this stuff stick more than it's supposed to. Okay, that piece is a wrap. Dang. All right, well, this is almost surely because I painted it shut. Disastrous. All right, I should have done that earlier. All right, well, that is, that's that. So I'll put those together or glue this down and then we'll see how it looks. These railroad ties are obviously going to remain brown, so the only thing I really need to do is punch these things. No. It's probably because it's late. I'm not even sure how this thing exactly goes together, but these thin pieces, somewhat refreshingly, are not breaking, which was my experience for the last couple hours with those other bits. Okay, that piece is a wrap. Dang. All right, well, this is almost surely because I painted it shut. Disastrous. All right, I should have done that earlier. All right, well, that is, that's that. So I'll put those together or glue this down and then we'll see how it looks.
They actually went together pretty easily after that, and then I just went ahead and used my stencils to kind of dirty up the railroad ties, and they look pretty good.
All right, well, all of the bottoms of the cars have been assembled. As I indicated, that was surprisingly difficult for me, but that could just be me. I did then go ahead and stencil some water damage on the wood base, and then I don't know if it's really showing up here or not. Let's see, kinda. Sprayed some black up from the bottom, just to give it a little bit of real quick aging and to get some randomness. So all four have been made up, and it should be pretty easy going from here on out. For the flatbed wagon that I'm doing, there's only 2 pieces left, and unfortunately, it looks like I may have spent some time aging the wrong one. Only left in the sprue are these little things to hook the cars together, which I'm not going to need, but I guess I'll need to do a little bit of aging on top of it, but I may file down these little nubs, but that should be it for that. So I'm not even going to bother anymore with that one. I'll just come back when that one's all done. Then I come up with the low aggregate wagon. As you may recall, I went ahead and rolled this gray, and then with an airbrush put some black on just to randomize again, get some pattern going on the metal. Probably be adding some rust effects to that. And all these car bottoms are the same, but the only other wood pieces here are the just the side panels. And again, I sprayed a little bit of random pattern on those to make them look a little beat up, and then took some light black around the edges. A high aggregate wagon, again, just being random. I have the metal pieces, and again, the wood rolled, and then just sprayed that blue. Used the stencil to get some pattern on there. The only one that looks a little bit involved is the goods wagon, which is the traditional rather looking train car. It's got some supports here, it looks like. Sprayed the metal with some black. These door panels, I again used the same stencil. These I'm not sure. Oh, okay. These would be the side pieces. I think these were for the doors. This is the roof. Kept it light on the top, dark on the sides because it's going to be pulled down and around. And there's some supports, and then the front and side panels again. Just airbrush the blue, and then put on the back. Did the excuse me, the brown over top of it with the stencil. So I'll go ahead and throw these together, because I'm sure it's not going to be too interesting, and then simply just report back if there's anything unusual to be able to look out for. All right, well, this went together really well, really fast at any rate. Certainly much more enjoyable build than doing the bottom parts of the car. This one is essentially done, the flatbed wagon, because it doesn't have it, excuse me, any walls. It was just these 2 pieces. All the other cars were essentially the same, where it's the 4, which are now blue pieces from the wall. A little white thing there that is bothering me, I'll have to worry about later. Even this one. I went ahead and put the structure of the roof together. This was the only part that I thought was really hard. You have to really, really press down hard to get it to snap in. All right, and they're all done. This one was obviously done in the last step. Here's the taller car. Here's the short one. This glue should still dry transparent, but get little globs, I'm going to cut it off. And then on the large storage, I made 2 of the doors open and 2 of them closed. I can push up, and I'm not going to do it now because the doors are still drying, but I can pop the roof off as well if you wanted to. But the lighter color in the middle kind of worked out like I wanted it to. I think they do look a little grungy and dirty like I wanted them to. Cutting the gray, the metal framing was a little bit harried in some of the spots. Obviously, you can just do the trick where you kind of, hold it up to the light and see what little tags are still holding it on. But that was the only thing that was kind of a pain. These as well, since they're kind of hooked together on the bottom, but there's nothing on the top, they want to sway a little bit, so you got to kind of straighten them out. for these two. But I'll probably take some gray and go back and touch up any parts that are a little overly light from being cut. And then the chapter 1 demo day is this weekend, so whether I'll actually get to the point where I get them back and put rust on these before then, I don't know, but eventually I'll do some rust and whatnot in the metal framing. I don't know that I'll do the same chipping method. I may do something a little different, just with some rush washes or something like that, maybe even an oil wash, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. This one was also a little bit of a pain. I'm gonna have to glue this side. This one tab keeps popping, and I did end up breaking out. Should have eaten earlier. The tacky glue, it holds the things better while it dries, so you're not having to. I was worried about using my normal method of using painter's tape to hold these little pieces on, just because when I pulled them off, I didn't know if it would delaminate the cardboard or tear paint, etc. So I basically just kind of pressed them on. These were fine. Again, the roof on the large storage was really the only issue. So that is the trains more or less done, or at least done enough for, I should say the trains, the rolling stock, I guess is a proper term for it, for scenario 1. And I think there was a tanker car and a couple, Carl's actual breakdown from the beta used different cars from Sarissa. Again, the reason I have this rolling stock set is just that I bought a train package that came with these, and they seem like they'll work well enough for me. A tanker car, when I think about it, would be kind of cool. It's Fisk's, factory where they're, making the Old Peculiar, and a tanker car would make more sense. It does say it's old and rusted, not in use, so maybe this train was just in the train yard before. Hard to say, but a tanker car would have been cool. Tanker car would also offer a little bit more cover. This is the only one that I'm a little bit hesitant on. I may go ahead and put some, barrels or something on this thing, just because in and of itself, it just doesn't seem to provide a whole lot of cover, which I think is the main point, rather, of having the cars there on the tracks in the train yard section. But I think the only thing I have left to build is potentially just the shack. In the graph paper, again, like the beta layout of the board, there in the northwest corner, there's another Sarissa building, and I think it's one of the old Western buildings that also kind of looks like a old dilapidated shack sitting there. But in the picture, the 3D isometric drawing, it is not there. So I'm not sure if it was removed or whether you simply can't see it in the picture because the large factory is in the way. But at this point, I don't know that I'll build that building for this particular scenario. I have some extra office bits, another powerhouse, and another just factory outbuilding that I can use up in that corner, just to kind of fill it in. And that's mainly out of my laziness, my time crunch. I'll build all like 40 some kits that I have for this scenario eventually, so it's not a matter of not wanting to do it. I just don't know how well it's going to work out in the short term, time wise, because I do have some miniatures that still need to be finished up. I was able to run a practice game of it last weekend, just with another 7 TV player, but I do want to, obviously for a legitimate demo day, have the miniatures painted up as well, so they can see the game in all its splendor and hopefully get hooked into it as I have. So the weathering, the additional oil washes and whatnot, I'm not sure if I'm going to put those on the factory buildings. Again, that's not something that I'm going to do immediately in the short term. The only other thing I really need to get done is the western, approximately third of the board is the rail yard. So I built the train tracks, but I still need to put some more paint on them, get them weathered up. And then I don't know if I'm going to just make like a 1 foot by 3 foot train yard section that just flops down on a 3x3 board, or whether I'm going to build a completely new 3x3 board for everything to sit in. I'm not going to glue any of the buildings down, obviously, or maybe it's not obvious. They're what are called static boards, where you build a board and you remove the stuff again. Especially
Those are especially useful if you're doing a historic scenario, I don't know, Pegasus Bridge in World War II or something like that. You want the layout to always be the same, because this stuff can be used in all sorts of other scenarios, and from World War II to pulp to even spy-fi, etc. I'm not going to be gluing any buildings actually down. I may make little outlines that make it easier to set up if I make a permanent board. I know for scenario 2 with the docking and the water, the docking may not be glued down permanently, but I'm going to have to make an actual 3D board so you can get the water level further down, which I think is a really nice look. But I will now have to, I guess, move on to deciding what I'm going to do with those train tracks, because that is the last major part of this board that needs to be done, and there's only a couple days to get everything done.
Here's some shots of the train cars all finished up. Actually sitting on the board, so you can kind of see how the stenciling looks a little bit more from a distance. Here you can see the layout as it was on 7TV demo day. I've got all the terrain put on a couple of neoprene concrete mats. I've added some crates from ArmorCast. The Eldridge Fisk machine that's in the middle of the factory is the ArmorCast plant pod. There's some fencing there from foreground. You can see that I do have the stairs flipped because I built them backwards. I didn't want them as a disadvantage, so you see the steel stairs going up there to the wood platform that looks a little bit jank. The Pegasus barrels, I added some height to the one flatbed car and some additional scatter. And then here in a second, you'll see I went and used that power plant from the mini factory set instead of the old shack that was essentially the same footprint that they had in the beta layout. But it worked really well. And this really brings us to the end. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I know 2 hours was really long. The next time, I'll probably try to break them up into smaller videos, hopefully. But see you next time.